Campaign finance reports are out, the numbers game for some key races.
Why should a millionaire have the right to, or a billionaire have the right to impose his views on other people?
And adjourn, the gavel drops at the Capitol. Lawmakers end their 100-plus day session. A look back at the issues that put Arizona in the national spotlight.
Arizona was in the national spotlight for about almost a week for all the wrong reasons.
Plus, some state lawmakers ready to hit the campaign trail. This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lorriane, and this is Arizona Week. Campaign finance reports were released April 15th. My colleagues Christopher Conover here at Arizona Public Media, a political correspondent, also Andrea Kelly, have read through the reports and are here now with what they found. Thank you both for being here. Andrea, let's begin with you. Any big surprises in these reports?
Well, I looked through the reports for congressional candidates in our most competitive races, and that would be Congressional District 1, which goes from Oro Valley to Utah. Congressional District 2, which is southern Arizona, it's Tucson and Cochise County, and Congressional District 9, which is a Phoenix metro area district. Those are close because of voter registration, and the races were won by small margins 2 years ago. And they're actually being looked at across the country as some of the most competitive races. So I looked at candidates in those races, and there are some interesting things. In Congressional District 2 here in Tucson, the two front runners financially are Ron Barber, the incumbent Democrat who's in office, and Martha McSally, the Republican challenging him. She ran against him 2 years ago. They're almost neck and neck in fundraising. She outpaced him. She brought in about $441,000 so far this year, and he brought in about $422,000 so far this year. So she raised about $20,000 more than him, but it's about a 5% difference. So even in the fundraising, that's a close race in that district. And they're basically bringing in the same proportion of money from individuals and other committees. But one thing we did find when we looked through the numbers was that McSally actually has a few other campaign committees that are supporting her directly. One of them is called Winning Women, and it's actually supporting 3 Republican candidates in two other states and McSally. They gave her about $100,000, so that's a pretty big chunk of that $441 that she raised, $1,000.
Go ahead, Christopher.
And interestingly, in that CD2 race, we've seen emails from the Barber campaign in recent days being very direct that he got outraised by McSally, and he's asking his supporters to not let that happen again. And he's using, even though it's only a $20,000 difference, that may sound like a lot of money to all of us and our viewers, but in campaigns that's not a lot of money. He's using that as a motivator for his backers to start sending money in now.
This also sounds like a lot of money so early on, is it?
We're going to see, I think fundraising is going to pick up in the summer. It almost always does in all of these campaigns. They're going to keep trying to get money into their campaign coffers so they have it to spend in the last few weeks of the campaign. So the next reports are due in about 3 months. They're quarterly. And I think we'll see a jump in the fundraising then, and then we'll really start to see the spending ramp up for the last part of the campaign. In McSally's case, she may have to do some spending before the primary in that race in late August, and then they'll both do the winner of that primary and Ron Barber will do a lot of spending and fundraising in that last few weeks before the November election. So I think we're going to see those numbers ramp up, but it is a lot of money, but it's not an inordinate amount for the beginning of a competitive race year.
Okay, these two candidates are no strangers to each other, so it's not unfair to assume that they're really going to ramp up their efforts this time around.
Yeah, and really the point of the money is that if people don't know who you are, they're not going to vote for you. So this money usually ends up going to mailers, TV ads, radio ads, getting the candidates' names and faces in front of the voters. That's really why the money matters in these races. If it weren't for the need to identify, to reach out to voters, then we wouldn't see this spending. Okay. So, we found some interesting things in other races, but there was another committee in the McSally race that we found.
Exactly. There's the Winning Women Committee that Andrea mentioned that's supporting McSally and 2 other Republican women in the country. There's also the McSally-Tobin Victory Committee. that is, as the name says, it supports Martha McSally and Andy Tobin, who's running in District 1. He's the current State House Speaker. He's trying to unseat Ann Kirkpatrick, the incumbent Democrat there. What's interesting is both of those committees are run by the same group out of Virginia, and they just collect money and then evenly, more or less evenly, distribute it to the candidates that they are named for. The person who runs that group is a consultant for the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Campaign. So you can see the NRCC's involvement. The NRCC is already running ads and has run ads in the Barbara McSally race going after Barbara. No surprise that they're involved at all.
And Andrew, you mentioned this. I mean, these are congressional districts that are already known on the national spotlight level at this point.
They're getting attention. All the people who do sort of calculations about which races are competitive or who's likely to win in different districts have called these toss-up races 2 years ago, and those predictions came true. Those margins of victories were so slim based on voter registration or voter turnout and voter numbers. And again, the money race is actually showing that it's pretty close too. I mean, we do have some differences. In CD9, the one in Central Phoenix, where Kirsten Sinema is a Democrat and an incumbent in that race, we're seeing a different picture than we are in those southern Arizona races. She has raised $419, so kind of in line with Ron Barber, same amount of raising, but her opponents have raised less than $150,000 each. So the difference between those candidates is greater. And actually, in her district, Republican Andrew Walter, who's running against her, he loaned himself $100,000. He raised a total of $112,000. So the fundraising, $100,000 is a lot, right? But a lot of it mostly came from himself.
And that was $419,000 for Kirsten Sinema.
$419,000.
Okay.
Something else we noticed, which I think we'll probably see a lot of with Winning Women, for example, their biggest donor last quarter gave them $15,600, and it was Vince McMahon. For our viewers who are World Wrestling fans, he's the executive of that group. He also gave $5,000 directly to McSally. So he's doubling up his money coming to McSally. His wife also happened to give $1,000 to McSally. So we're going to see a lot of that this campaign, where you give to a group that is specifically for a candidate or a group of candidates and to the individual candidate.
And how likely is it when you see those high-profile donors really come forward and put their support behind someone that kind of elevates that candidate to a different level?
It certainly elevates them financially. As Andrea said, money is time, in this case, time on TV, time on radio, time in our mailboxes and email boxes. So money is time, money is important. We may see, and there's no indication of this, but some of these high dollar donors could possibly show up. Now, you have the other high dollar donor who just has, nobody knows who they are. For example, Americans for Responsible Solutions, which is the gun control PAC run by Gabby Giffords and Mark Kelly. They received this last quarter a $500,000 donation, individual donation from a woman named Dolores Barr Weaver. She's the former co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars of the NFL. She and her husband owned it. She's very active in the Florida community, giving money to various charities, especially women's-based organizations. But she gave $500,000. She could come out here and fundraise and nobody would know who she is. So it's a different type of person as opposed to a Vince McMahon. For those people who follow wrestling, everybody knows who he is.
Okay, Andrea Kelly and Christopher Conover, both political correspondents here at Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your analysis. And furthering this discussion, the Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling over campaign finance, one that no longer restricts how much money a single donor can put forth toward an election season. To talk more about what this means for the future of campaigns and the political landscape is David Berman, a professor of political science at the Morrison Institute at Arizona State University. David, thank you for your time. Let's begin with what does the overall picture of campaign financing in the state look like right now?
Oh, right now the state is, I think, fairly standard when it comes to the individual candidates' campaigns. There are limits on contributions, how much somebody can give to it. There are disclosure requirements. We do have a system of public financing of a campaign, so though it's been somewhat limited by Supreme Court decisions. So there is a pretty standard package for candidates who are individuals who are running for office. Where we seem to be lacking is on the independent expenditure campaigns that are out there, and disclosure of the donors to those campaigns has been an issue in the legislature.
Now, with this ruling, can we expect any changes, especially to see in this next election cycle that we have coming up here?
Yeah, I think what that ruling does is take away the overall limits on contributions to people who are running for Congress. It doesn't affect the state campaigns. We don't have any aggregate limits on those anyhow because of the bill that was passed last year in the legislature. But it means that there'll probably be more congressional candidates getting contributions than in the past. How much would be spent on campaigns without that decision is pretty hard to determine because, God, a lot of money is being spent and has been spent already on these campaigns. So that I suspect that it will mean that there'll be more money spent on congressional campaigns, and the wealthy donors will be the ones who will be spending the money. They have it to spend, obviously. They're in a better position to do that. Some people think that maybe they'll be giving less money to these independent campaigns and just give them directly to the candidates. I'm not so sure that'll happen, but I do think that you'll see more money being poured on the whole into congressional campaigns because of that decision.
Now, when this was being discussed at the Supreme Court level, we heard a lot about free speech. Would you agree that this is an issue of free speech? Is it not? Or how do you sort of quantify that?
Well, if you're talking about the right to be anonymous in your contribution and give it to an independent committee, and that's what you do very often, and you are not required to disclose yourself as a donor. This has been defended, and also the limiting the aggregate amounts that you can spend in the last decision have both been defended on the grounds of free speech. The court sees it that way, Supreme Court sees it that way. Other people see it as really neglecting the problem that results from that, because it's what you're really saying is the people who have a lot of money get to speak a little bit louder than other people. Many campaigns have been overwhelmed now with large contributions from wealthy donors. The Koch brothers are always cited, but others are there too, and corporations. It's gotten to the point where many of our campaigns are simply the playgrounds of billionaires who pretty much monopolize the media. Nearly all the messages you see and all the candidates who are running, particularly the independent candidate, through the independent committees, are very dependent upon this money, and sometimes we don't even know where it's coming from, but we know that in the Koch brothers case, a lot of it comes from them, and there are billionaire liberals too. We've really reached a point where, because of Supreme Court decisions, the influence of very wealthy people has really magnified. You see candidates going to Las Vegas, kissing the ring of the billionaire to get an endorsement.
Now,
so it's...
well, does that
Go
change
ahead.
the political landscape moving forward?
Basically means that as voters, and looking at voters, the messages they get are largely from one side or for one set of candidates. Many people argue that you really, the marketplace's ideas is fine as long as everybody can get in the marketplace and compete equally. But there isn't equal competition, so I think that we're missing a lot because we're not getting the messages balanced. It used to be a long time ago, I certainly would remember, you had equal time for candidates and a fairness doctrine, the FCC, because you realized that the people were not getting all the information from both sides of the spectrum, that they were hearing only one side of the story. And why should a millionaire have the right to, or a billionaire have the right to impose his views on other people. Where's the other message? How do we get that out?
Okay, David Berman, thank you so much for your analysis. Appreciate your time, and we'll wait to see what the election cycle holds for us. Thank you again, David.
Well, thank you.
To other news now, the legislature wrapped up its session this week. The last day, a 16-hour day, a long, late Wednesday night into Thursday morning, but a productive one. To take a look back at the session, I'm joined by Representative Ethan Orr, a Republican from the Tucson area, and Minority Leader Senator Ana Tovar, a Democrat from the Phoenix area, and also political correspondent here at Arizona Public Media, my colleague Christopher Conover. Thank you all for being here.
Lorriane.
So Ana, let's begin with you. What would you say was the biggest headline out of the session?
Well, I would say the biggest headline this session, Lorraine, would have to have been 1062. And that, for the viewers, to remind them, that was the discriminatory bill against religious rights and, discriminatory based on who you love. Arizona was in the national spotlight for about almost a week for all the wrong reasons. I would say was probably the biggest. We've had others. I would categorize this session as definitely as missed opportunities and misguided priorities. We've seen that from the governor vetoing many of those misguided principles and priorities that the Republican caucus spent time on this session.
And Ethan, we'll go back to you for the conversation surrounding 1062, which certainly put Arizona in the national spotlight.
It certainly did, and a lot of the media and the bill itself was unfortunate. As you know, I was one of 3 Republicans that voted against it, and I was the only Republican that voted against a similar bill last year. And I sat with the governor and some other members from the House and Senate for about an hour and a half on the fateful day that she decided to veto it, and we talked to her, and I think she listened to both sides very carefully and made a rational decision to veto it. There were a lot of problems with that bill, but I think the headline that has been missed is basically the K-12. We've been able to, with the 301 money, but also the governor's student success funding, we've been able to put an additional $80 million into our public schools. Another thing that's very near and dear to my heart down here is JTED, the Joint Technological Education Districts. Some of these, this is a vocational based education. They have, in some cases, a 98%, according to the Morrison Institute, graduation rate. Highly effective way of drawing kids into the workforce and into college, and I was able to secure an additional $1.5 million for those programs.
And Christopher, you've been covering the legislature for a long time. It seems education is always on the front burner.
Education is always on the front burner. It's the largest part of the state budget, and that's why you see so many arguments over it, and it takes up a lot of things, everything from kindergarten to elementary, high school, and the colleges and the universities, and then some of the things like Representative Orr mentioned, JTED.
And the governor's budget, I mean, she would have wanted more money for education. Of course, that didn't happen. Ana, is there any indication that maybe we'll see that conversation kick up again perhaps next time?
Well, it definitely is a hot topic issue. You know, our public education system is coming off the cuts of a nearly $3 billion cuts to public education. And we saw this year some very controversial issues being presented in education, one of those being the empowerment scholarships that many of us know them as vouchers. Again, the legislature, did put money into education, but not nearly as enough that needs to have quality education, specifically quality public education within the state of Arizona. The other hot topic in education was again our Common Core standards. It got so hot that the name was changed, but the standards remained the same. And you had many legislators from the Republican Party essentially trying to kill these higher standards. But thankfully, the business community, teachers and families came and spoke and said, in order for Arizona to move forward for the 21st century and have our children ready, we need to have higher standards. So I'm thankful that, along with moderate Republicans and Democrats, we were able to kill a lot of those anti-Common Core bills as well.
Would you agree with that, Ethan?
I agree, and one of the things on the ESA, the scholarships, there were a number of bills. Basically, that program was originally conceived a few years ago for people for which there was, for example, a severely autistic child that can't be accommodated within the public school system, and that makes perfect policy sense. The bill that Senator Tovar is talking about was 2291. I was one of the people that opposed it, and the reason I opposed it is it was expanding the program based on geography, which makes no policy sense. And one of the statements I said on the floor, which I adhere to, is I believe in student choice, but I believe that student choice starts with a well-funded and well-functioning public education system. These are institutions that are geographically based and they support a neighborhood. And I think once we have a strong, functioning public education system available to every student, I think we do need to look at things like magnet schools and charter schools and ESA accounts so that students can specialize. But it's extremely important to me that every student has a world-class educational opportunity in the state.
Okay, Christopher?
You mentioned Representative Orr the budget earlier. It is the kind of the overarching bill that runs through. You were one of the 6 moderate Republicans, the gang of 6, if you will, who really held up that House budget this year. But in the end, you ended up voting for it. But I watched your floor speech. You seemed pretty reluctant to hit that green button on that last vote for the budget. Why?
You know, I was. Basically, there were, I think we could have done better when we go back into special session. For example, the child care subsidies, I think, are some of the most effective welfare to work programs that we can have. They literally are ways that single mothers and low-income families can come off of government assistance and become contributors. So I wanted the $10 million for that. I'm going to fight very hard in the special session. Ultimately, what brought me on the budget is there were things that I care very deeply about: the JTED, the University of Arizona, and mental health funding, as well as the HERF, the roadways. And had my vote not been there, the JTED, the U of A, and the mental health would have probably all gone to zero.
Senator Tovar, if you would, talk about the governor vetoing some of these gun bills that we saw that really took up some attention here toward the later end of the session.
Well, what you saw coming out of the legislature in regards to gun bills were, again, bills that didn't make any sense and bills that Arizona didn't need or want. But yet you have, a Republican-led legislature that feels that, these are issues and priorities that they want to present. Thankfully, the governor vetoed I believe it was 4 gun bills that she has vetoed to date. One of them, probably the most notable one, is the Guns Everywhere bill, where guns would be allowed, in libraries and at swimming pools if they didn't have a proper locker storage. And part of the governor's veto is that she had notedly said that this would be a due burden on not only our cities and towns, but also for our businesses as well. So another gun bill that it was not needed at the state legislature, but I'm hopeful that within the next session we can come and talk about common sense solutions for guns.
Representative Orr, is that a likely discussion to take place?
You know, I think it will, but one of the things that I'm trying to do is actually move and shift the priorities of the legislature. If you look at the things that I push, we talked about the Paragon space flight, which I think is incredibly exciting that we'll be doing commercial space flight in a year. I push very hard to support our veterans to make sure that there was a better transition from the military into educational, and I passed a bill that would help us give an honorable burial to unclaimed remains. Now, one of the things that was so interesting about the gun bills is a lot of times we'll grab a headline or we'll look at the short title of the bill and make a decision based on that and not really read the text of the bill. So, for example, one of the bills that was vetoed made it was a felony and it was an assault if I were to take your firearm and then try and accost you with it and use that. I frankly think that should be an assault. You can say that's superfluous because you could charge it in 100 different ways, but it's certainly not extremist. Other ones I saw on the floor, people even from this area, there was a hunting bill that people rallied against because it said hunting. They said, I don't like hunting. And if you actually read the text of the bill, what it said, it was a property rights bill. It said that if a hunter is on private property, the owner has the right to ask them to leave, otherwise they're trespassing. And so one of the things that's so important in this type of very emotional conversation is to make sure we're reading the text. Now, I do think that the focus shouldn't be on guns per se. There shouldn't be as many of them. I'd like to see, and I think most Arizonans and I think most Republicans would like to see how we're fixing our roads, how we're improving our education system.
Let's talk about Child Protective Services, or what once was named Child Protective Services. You'll be called back into a special session here in a few weeks to talk about that agency. This week we saw some people lose their jobs over this investigation. What are we going to see in the future, Senator?
Well, we hope to see some solutions, some bipartisan solutions. We knew day one going into this legislature session that CPS was the biggest issue to tackle, but yet we sine-died after 101 days, essentially not doing too much to the CPS system. We granted, some more caseworkers and funding for that, but to say that we tackled this issue in depth, was far from that. So again, we look at coming back into a special session in about 2 to 3 weeks. I know that Representative Orr had mentioned the child care subsidy. We know that for Democrats, we will be fighting for not only child care subsidies, but preventative services as well. We can't essentially move this agency, to a new building, put some paint on it, and have new, caseworkers, and essentially expect it to run efficiently. There needs to be monumental changes to this agency in order for us to make sure that our children, our most vulnerable children, that this essentially never happens to them again.
Representative Orr and Christopher are both nodding their heads here in agreement.
I would actually completely agree with Senator Tovar. One, we do need to focus on prevention. Getting back to the child care subsidies, when those were cut in 2008, we actually saw a spike in the crisis due to neglect. And so if you look at it, it's very penny wise and pound foolish not to fund these types of programs. In fact, one of the things that I've been working on in the past year is looking at the way we do our entire DES model. It's not effective. Basically what we do, we're very siloed. If you need food stamps, I'll get you food stamps. If you need a house, I'll get you a house. What we need to do is realign the entire thing to say there is a person at point A that they're dependent on the system, but they don't want to be. They want to be a contributor. They want a job. How do we move them from here to there? And I think things like child care subsidies, training programs are so very important. And I think as you move more people to a state of independence, giving them the support they need, you're going to see the cases of neglect reduce. And so I think Senator Tovar is exactly right. We need to look at these preventative, smart investments.
Okay, Christopher?
Senator Tovar, we just heard Republican Representative Orr agree with the child care subsidies. It was something that Democrats fought very hard for through the multiple versions of the budget. When you come back for the special session and the focus is just CPS, are you hopeful that you can convince enough Republicans to do these child care subsidies, or is this going to be something we just hear Democrats and some Republicans like Representative Orr rally for on the floor, but to no end?
No, I definitely believe that this issue, having heard from a lot of Republicans as well, this issue is definitely an issue that they feel that would be a wise investment in making sure that our families are being kept safe and have those opportunities to succeed. So definitely I feel that this is a worthwhile investment, and I do feel that we would have bipartisan support on this issue.
Okay, thank you all for your analysis. Appreciate your time. And thank you so much for joining us. That's our program. For all of us here at Arizona Week, I'm Lorriane Rivera.